Hey guys, Luli here, and welcome back to our line. Let's continue on, shall we? With the epilogue. I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to everyone here. You've handled this stressful schedule commendably.
Bravo!
It's been excellent work working with a party planning committee such as yourselves. Baxter bowed his head politely. It was clear he was trying to maintain the wall of formality with his roles as the wedding planner, but his earnest tone gave him away. Baxter meant what he said from the heart. Before comments could be made, he changed gears and tapped the pad of his finger to his chin. My main concern at this point is simply the partygoers enjoying themselves the day of. Though there are a few remaining details we need to get out of the way before I leave, it's minor. The room buzzed with excitement. The fruits of your hard labor were already almost ready to feast on. Miranda reached across Terry on the couch and gave her brother a big high five.
So great.
I can't believe we made it in one piece.
Seriously.
You and me both. They both laughed heartily, and she offered Scott a high five next. Terry, meanwhile, dropped his chin on Miranda's spine with a quiet hum. She squared at the sun contact of Scott's hand. Scott immediately shifted from the high five to make sure Miranda wouldn't lose her balance. Baxter cleared his throat to gain the room's attention. His soft expression grew more focused.
Is that fine?
As I said before, we have a few remaining details to sort out. May I? Knock yourself out. Hurry before Randy knocks somebody upside the head. I'm fine, June. Thank you for being concerned. Yep. Miranda resumed her seat perched at the arm of the couch, and Terry signaled Baxter to start with a thumbs up. So we had quite a productive day, as you might have seen. Scott sat up straighter in his seat and nodded confidently. He couldn't hold his thought a second longer. Got the suits, they're super. Though, he was the man who assisted us at the store, was a massive help finding us options that worked splendidly off the rack. And Baxter showed us some steps. He sheepishly rubbed the side of his neck and glanced at his husband-to-be. Judah playfully bumped his shoulder into Scott's side. Guess we're gonna have to have a slow dance.
Exciting!
It will be delightful. Oh, you know it. From there, the conversation kept rolling. You, Terry, and Miranda listened while the couple confirmed with the final touches of their wedding ceremony. And I have some additional good news to share. It's an update new to the whole room. Xavier sent me their progress on the cake. It's finished and will be delivered tomorrow as requested. Would any of you like to see the photos?
Yes!
Yes, please. Sure. In the flash, Baxter held his phone out and tapped the screen. He flipped it and walked the picture around the room for his audience. The cake on display was 3 tiers, and the white frosting had rows of lines textured all the way down. Pipe leaves and flowers were dotted about as accents. It was understated and stylish. So pretty. We'll actually have a cake for this, well made for this reception. I seriously appreciate what they've done for us. The baker did good. While the couple's words were complimentary, honest praise for an objective nice piece, there was a problem. It was obvious the cake was the result of their former lack of synergy. The final result was as finished and not ugly as generic as Jude had insisted upon. It could have been a random stock photo Baxter found online. Scott was amazed by the craftsmanship regardless, but seeing it for himself, Jude slouched slower into the couch. Well, it tastes as nice as it looks. Xavier is gifted in the kitchen. Great. Some notable creases remained in Jude's brows, but he still managed to smile. Baxter nodded, and no one had anything else to add about the cake. The conversation pivoted away. Baxter ran through the ceremony procedure piece by piece, and the intended time for every moment. Much of the familiar information at this point, however, it was crucial to have it all straight.
Now
I have one last question for the couple. There's a tradition where the two being married choose not to see each other or not to have any communication whatsoever before the ceremony. Would that be something you would want to consider? I can arrange your separate areas for each of you to get ready. The men frowned nearly simultaneously. They gave each other a long silent stare. It'd be hard not seeing or talking to each other at all. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
What if there's a problem? Scott's frown deepened. He lifted his gaze and rubbed the bridge of his nose. We gotta see the thing through together. Beaming, Scott hooked an arm around Jude's shoulder and pulled him close. He whispered into his fiance's ear, "We're gonna throw a great wedding."
Ha!
I know that. Are you both feeling prepared to get married then?
Yeah.
Yes, we're ready to go. Jude rested his cheek on Scott's shoulder and let out a gentle sigh. The peaceful look on his face splintered. Yeah. He looks nervous. Very good. There was something in Baxter's tone that caught your attention. His gaze lingered on Jude. Yeah, there's something that we both see. Whatever he was thinking, he kept to himself.
It's settled.
No, it wasn't. You could read it on him like a billboard. I believe this means we can call it an end for our final.
Amazing.
Wow. Woo. I think it's about the cake. I don't know if it's just that, but the couple got to their feet and gave their heartfelt thanks and goodbyes. Miranda hopped off the armrest and pulled Terry along too. Raising a brow, you watched as Baxter's actually left. Jude and Scott walked him to the door. You followed them. Baxter left with one last farewell and the door was shut. The day had wrapped up nicely. Everyone had done as best as they could. Yet, regardless of all the signs, you remain unconvinced that Baxter had finished his planning. From there, Jude and Scott rallied themselves into the one last cleaning session before bed. They began putting their house into some semblance of order. They were unstoppable. Scott pivoted and you sidestepped out of the way. In the living room, Terry and Miranda were settled on the cushions of the couch together, watching something quietly on one of their phones. They were going to be home soon, and the last thing you wanted was to get in the way of each other, power couple. But a guiding light came in the form of your phone buzzing to life. Lo and behold, it was Baxter Ward. This text wasn't for the group chat. He sent it to you directly. I'm sorry for messaging out of the blue, but could you do me a favor? I need you to meet me outside. I'm still here. I want to speak with him. Can you convince him to do that? I'm worried he might not listen, or he'll tell Scott if I text him directly. You tapped out an answer to Baxter. I guess I can be your partner in crime. You owe me one. Noted. Thank you, Luna. I mean, I had the same thought, too, so you were forming an idea on where this was about to go as you slipped your phone into your pocket and got to work. Scott hadn't moved into the living room, so that meant Jude was alone in the kitchen. Perfect timing. Fortunately, he was too absorbed in his task to notice you sneaking past. Jude stood at the sink, humming a quiet tune. He was already making a dent into washing the dishes that piled up from earlier today. Hey, Jude? Sup? He didn't take his eyes off the studs. He hung back in the doorway and made sure that you were alone before inching closer. I know this is gonna sound weird, but could you follow me outside for a second? He looked at you then. Yeah, that does sound weird. But he put the bowl he was finished scrubbing on the drying rack and then dried his hands.
Sure.
Lead the way. Thanks. The two of you were halfway through the house, almost home free, when Jude started you by speaking. You stopped it in your tracks. This is about Baxter, right? How did you blow it that bad? You were about to blurt it out, but then Jude crossed his arms and his expression morphed into something that you expect more from Liz. Oh. Jude wasn't on to what was really happening. He thought you wanted to talk about Baxter from your own personal angle. Your conflicting emotions must have been dancing across your face because Jude dropped the protective expression in first sympathetic.
It's good.
You can tell me about it outside. Bullet dodged. Without exchanging another word, you let him out the front door. Jude froze only for a couple feet outside his doorstep. His fetch snapped to the side, catching where Baxter was leaning against the side of the house.
Hello.
Hello, Jude. And thank you so much for your help, Luna. Baxter moved off to the wall and readjusted his jacket. It grinned widely and sent a shiver down your spine. There was something about arranging a confrontation at night with an unsuspecting mark and a man in a well-tailored suit that made you feel you were not accomplished to a crime. Loki Heel falls into a trap set by a devious monochrome supervillain and all that. You coughed and turned away to regain your composure. Baxter's master plan was going to be in Jude's favor, obviously. Not that he knew that. Jude's gaze flickered between his two captors. What's going on? That's exactly what I wanted to ask. You didn't appear particularly thrilled at the ending of our meeting. Jude's uneasiness vanished and was replaced by a clenched jaw. It's all good, Baxter.
Come on.
You'll have to do better than that. I don't believe either of us are convinced.
It's fine.
Things are going to be as good as they're going to be. Baxter sighed at the note of hurt in Joe's tone. He left his hands sink into his pockets. We can't even begin to find a solution or a compromise if you're not willing to discuss the issue. Jude tapped his foot anxiously. He hoped someone else would speak, but the two of you are waiting for him. It's way too late.
I understand.
I believe I have an idea what this is about, but I could be wrong. Please try me. Jude opened his mouth, hesitating, closed it. He glanced away and scrubbed his fingers through his hair.
Why not?
Why not? You're the wedding planner. He let out a defeated sigh and guiltily lifted his gaze. The problem was with that cake. I screwed it up. It's our wedding, our chance to do whatever you want, and I didn't let him or me do that. We only needed to talk 15 minutes about a design and flavors and shit, and it would have been good. But thinking that now doesn't matter. There's nothing we can do. The tirade was the longest you've ever heard Jude speak all in a row, and the angriest. Baxter listened sympathetically. When he was certain Jude had said his piece, Baxter took his turn.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the cake is finished. Xavier wasn't capable of overhauling the design of an entire wedding cake at the last hour. Even adding new decorations isn't particularly feasible. And I can't recommend you doing anything to the cake without discussing it with Scott first regardless. That's why I'm keeping my mouth shut. The baker did what I wanted, but that cake is always going to be something I regret. Jude squeezed his eyelids shut and he emitted that out loud. Baxter's expression tightened as he exhaled through his nose. Jude, have you perhaps heard of a concept of a groom's cake? Jude cracked an intrigued eye open. He studied Baxter cautiously.
No clue.
No? What's that?
Well,
wedding cakes are often tailored to only one half of the couple's tastes. There's a cliche of a bride picking out a dream wedding and a groom being left out of the process entirely for a reason. The situation can certainly apply to any gender couple, and sometimes it isn't a problem for the pair. In this case, you could say the wedding was more of your choice than Scott's. Now, the basic concept is that you have the beautiful classic wedding cake of multiple teas and understanding color scheme as the main piece. The second cake is a smaller and often far more themed in design. Something potentially showcasing a hobby, a sports-themed cake, for example, or a video game-themed cake. It is meant to be the preference of the person who didn't get their say before. That way both people in the relationship get what they like. And adding a groom's cake makes for a much more and better surprise than redoing a piece that was already agreed on. Are you for real? That's a thing.
absolutely.
It is. Scott and I met playing games online. Could we get something to celebrate that? A video game themed cake? Your eyes flickered back and forth between them. Jude's hopeful excitement contracted with Baxter's strained smile in a painfully humorous way. Baxter's pinched the bridge of his nose. We can't ask Xavier to create an entirely new cake on short notice. Well, we might be able to find a pre-made one of those video game accents. It would be more young child's birthday cake than most important event of your life, groom's cake. Jude began to visibly deflate, and that was the apex of this final meeting. Baxter had drawn him outside, got him to open up his feelings. Everything had processed as he requested, and it was as expected. Baxter knew that this was about the cake, so he waited to hear why. The hand still in Baxter's pocket had morphed into fists, and his arms were pulling down so tensely his sleeves might have ripped off the shoulders if he was in something of lesser quality. But by the looks of it, Jude wasn't the only one questioning his various choices. But, of course, Baxter Ward was good friends with bad ideas. If you're truly desperate, I could do it. I could make a groom's cake. Jude's jaw went from a dip to a drop. Baxter had done a lot in the past few days, but he always remained within the boundaries of his job. Even going to pick up and drop off centerpiece supplies could be considered part of the process if you had an especially involved planner. However, making a groom's cake the night before the wedding was definitely not how any of this worked. Baxter Ward was taking a flying leap past the line of professional courtesy.
What?
You make cakes? Jude slowly articulated through his shock. Baxter nervously blew the edge of his swooped bangs.
Not professionally, no.
It won't taste as good as the wedding cake. I can curb that expectation right now. I'll have to use a box mic, and it won't be true 3D carved shape. That's something better left to the pros. However, I can manage to create a cake that fits the bill better than a sheet cake with some plastic decorations stuck in it. I can use a stencil to make it look like a control and frost to do so. And I do have some experience baking for the cake. I did help make the cupcakes for Rinda's 19th birthday. Not just the chocolate fountain. Baxter blinked and then scratched the side of his neck. He let out an awkward chuckle at that tiny bit of info he proceeded.
Yes.
Yes, I did a touch more than providing a simple chocolate fountain.
Done.
Well, hell, if you can do it. That would be... I don't know how I can make it up to you. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a lot. But I'm sure something can work out. I mean, they exist for a reason. I just don't know how I can make it up to you. Don't allow the stretch of having to plan the perfect wedding ruin the experience. That is all I ask for. And don't smash any of the first or second cake into Scott's face as a surprise. Despite Baxter's lighthearted teasing, Jude continued to stare at him astonished.
Thanks.
Dude, thanks.
You're welcome.
Quite welcome. And now I can comfortably say that's all we're set for tomorrow. You're going to need to get to rest before morning, so take it easy tonight. I'll be going now. They were serious. Baxter was going to make a themed groomed cake the night before the week he was planning. He was so ridiculous, and he absolutely needs someone to watch out for him. You can always laugh. Still, there's no way you were going to let him walk away alone. Well, I need something to fill up my nights. I'll help with the cake. Amazing. Baxter shot an unimpressed glance at Jude, and then he tried to rein his emotions in.
It's...
Luna, I promise I can do this on my own. This was my choice. Don't try to talk me out of it. Jude wouldn't let Scott do everything himself, and I'm not going to let you get overwhelmed trying to do everything on your own either. You need help. Baxter hesitantly in discomfort was evident. He gave the collar of his shirt a light touch.
Is that fine?
I'll be baking in my apartment. Is that fine with you? I'll go with you. He still didn't quite believe his ears, but he also didn't question your actions any further. Fine, I am grateful for your assistance.
Oh.
Thanks again. Oh. I'll text a picture of Scott's favorite controller in for Luna. I'll bullshit some reason you're gone. Yes, that'll be excellent. Jude's forethought got Baxter to refocus on the situation. He scratched the side of his cheek. But before we go, I have one more question for you, Jude. Shoot. Do you have a cake mix? And either pre-made frosting or powdered sugar? And perhaps food coloring in a cheap pen, too, if you have that. He far exceeded the limits of one more question, and managed to tell you both indirectly that he'd need literally everything other than eggs and oil. Baxter was shameless about his request and simply shrugged instead.
Honestly.
I don't have any baking supplies. I figured it would save us a trip to the store and fret over brands if you could use ingredients from your own kitchen. Of course you don't have any baking supplies. Jude tipped his head back and nodded. He laughed. He rocked forward and wiped a tear from his eye.
Got it.
He'd probably have stuff he can use. Wait here. Jude jogged to the house, leaving you and Baxter there on the driveway. He didn't even bother closing the door, so the light from inside fell between you. Neither of you uttered a single word. Jude would either return any minute, and you would have the whole night to say anything either of you wanted. A couple minutes later, Jude rushed back with his arms full. He passed to Baxter a sheet cake pan with supplies, carrot cake, 2 containers of cheesecake frosting, and a box of red, green, and blue, yellow coloring. Scott prefers this way more than chocolate and vanilla. We can do a lot with this.
Perfect.
Yes, it's going to work. Good night, Jude, and I'll take care of this, and Luna, you have nothing to worry about. How kind of you. Arching a playful brow, you placed a hand on your hip. You swung your attention to Jude. Though, I'm starting to wonder if I should be more concerned about the cake or myself. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. Baxter's mouth crooked into a familiar smirk. Jude shook his head and waved you both on.
All right.
Alright, we're on the clock. Drive safe. And with that, you and Baxter split from the group for one final pre-wedding mission. You hurried across the street and climbed into his car. Soft music poured out of his car stereo in lieu of conversation, fitting himself in at the ambient backseat of the drive of Prism Vista. Streetlights lined the freeway and cars rushed by with their own purposeful missions. Yours was just as important. Baking cakes was no small matter. Baking a cake at all, well, Baxter's, it was a novelty, all things considered. There had been times when you went to the condo rented out for Baxter by the elusive Mr. and Mrs. Ward, on top of the occasions when you've been to his office to help with the wedding planning. Now you're going to be treading new ground to his day-to-day space. There is something that felt impossibly impersonal about it. That kind of thing wasn't even an option that summer. His family lived out of state, and he wasn't going to college across the country. He wondered if 19-year-old Baxter would have invited you into his home or dorm room, if he could have. It didn't take long to come up with an answer. He had a feeling that he would have avoided it. Monochrome Baxter would have been in a heap of trouble if the people he wanted to hide from knew where he lived. So what made this Baxter different from that one? The veneer of professionalism colored your shared silence, but the air wasn't taut with tension so much as buzzing with anticipation. This looks gorgeous. It almost looks like a hotel room. Eventually, Baxter pulled into the parking lot of a high-rise apartment building, that explains it, and with some fumbling managed to get through the doorway with some cake materials in arm. He entrusted the cake mix, arguably the most important part, to you. As Baxter gestured to the modern decor in the minimalist lobby he passed through, he guided you both toward a polished chrome elevator. His fingerprints were left behind on the shining buttons. The elevator took you to the 11th floor, where you followed Baxter to the end of the hall and into his apartment. Shrugging the supplies more to one side, he unlocked the door and held it open. After you, Luna. Don't mind if I do. By the time he closed his mouth, you already made your way inside the apartment. There's a part of you that was undeniably curious about what you'll find. Orange and blue. Interesting. But gorgeous. What have you expected it wasn't this? The apartment opened up to a chic living room embellished with tones of oranges, blues, and grays. Silvery curtains were drawn to the side, and the metal on some of the furniture gleamed with a similar polish to those in the lobby. Distant light from the cityscape shone in from the huge floor-to-ceiling glass that opened onto a balcony. From here, it felt as though Prism Vista stretched impossibly far. It was more at this moment that you were reminded of how incredibly small Sunset Bird was by comparison. Baxter's voice grounded you again as he entered from your periphery, hands newly emptied from the baking supplies. You must have put them down when you were looking around.
What do you think?
So this is my home. But there was a whisper of the thrill in that question. No black and white decor, Baxter? Did the furniture store run out, you joke?
I apologize.
Sorry, I left them back in 2016 where they belong. He rolled his eyes at the joke, though it wasn't done of any genuine irritation. He knew better than anyone his fixation was more than a little odd. That isn't entirely true, of course. I continue on my assistance on my monochrome pass that year. It hadn't been as long as I would have liked since I made my peace with the full color spectrum. Still, I think we're speaking in terms of my many years away. I hope you're happy together. He merely grinned, a wary expression settling on his face as he nodded in agreement.
You're too kind.
Now, Luna, I must thank you for volunteering your services in this exceedingly ill-thought-out and wholly inconvenienced task. Not many would. I do believe we should get started before it gets any later. He rounded the couch, slipping off his jacket before tossing it with reckless abandon over his blue armchair. He gently tugged at the edges of his sleeves, inspecting them for some non-existent dust. I will hang that up correctly later. To be fair, I'm torn between sticking two fingers in your mouth and whistling, and then your gaze lingered. But I think I'm going to go with this one. Your gaze lingered only to turn away when you realized he noticed. There's no good reason for staring. It wasn't as if Baxter was doing something outlandish or showing something more than really ought to, and somehow it was still embarrassing. And what was more humiliating that you were embarrassed in the first place. Rubbing at your cheeks to try and play it off if you were tired, you continued staring at the wall. Thankfully, Baxter was considerate as ever and didn't pay any mind.
Very well.
Let's go over what we need to do in this semi-flexible list of steps. He passed you on his way to the small kitchen unit, gesturing every so often to where he places things as he reviewed. We'll need to first preheat the oven, then prepare the batter in the pan and bake it. After, we'll make the stencil, dye the frosting, and take the cake out and let it cool. Then cut the cake into the approximate shape of the controller using the stencil. He took a precursory glance at the tub of frosting you've been allotted before ultimately picking it up and checking the bottom for an expiration date. Finally, we'll apply the base coating of frosting, add detailing, pack it up so that it's ready to be simply taken out for the venue in the morning. Baxter returned to the frosting to the counter where he'd taken it.
Well,
That doesn't sound impossible. The grimace that suddenly crossed his features betrayed his disbelief. It might not have been impossible, but that didn't mean it would have been difficult. Exchanging the frosting tin for the cake mix, he scanned the directions on the back before reaching the oven's digital screen to set the temperature. 350 degrees. I'm assuming Fahrenheit. The application beeped with recognition and its interior lights flickered on in warning. So it begins. Tucking his nails beneath the box top, Baxter worked at opening it. The world wasn't going to give him a single break forever, as it refused to come apart cleanly. Only the paper on the top came off, while the rest of the flap remained glued down. Baxter had to tediously tear at the cardboard. Scraps were abandoned to the tabletop little by little while he searched for a bowl.
to be honest,
You may be surprised to hear this, Luna. I am quite skilled cook these days. I had a short life's worth of delicious and interesting meals. There's something quite satisfying about making it for myself as opposed to going to a restaurant. Yummed as he pressed his hand into the box, the top of it eventually splitting open to unveil its contents to him. Baxter took out the pouch of mix and examined what remained of the box once more. I fortunately don't have any of those offerings for you today. This is just to say that the first and last I've baked a dessert or decorated anything was you for Miranda's birthday. He chuckled as he used scissors to get the plastic baggie open before he emptied the dusty contents into the bowl he scrounged up. I do hope those savior skills are transferable. It should be interesting either way. You never made a cake again? That might have been semi-disastrous, so you weren't particularly surprised I never repeated. Yeah, not that surprised. Except he so suggested his confectionery services today. Honestly, it seemed like to him he'll do something like that. Baxter was always the type to offer to do whatever it was needed of him, even if it was something that he wasn't prepared to do. It was funny how he would it was always the Eric siblings who managed to get him mixing batter.
so
What about you? What about me? Have you done much cake decorating in the recent years? Yes, I'll say I'm even better. In real life, I'm not. Baxter's gaze wandered to you as he gauged where to place his expectations.
you are incredible.
How impressive. This may go better than I thought. Don't sweat the details too hard. We'll make what we make. It was simple as that. You headed to the sink to wash your hands. Without further discussion, and with a massive list of things to still be done, you and Baxter set to work preparing the cake. That went without a hitch, shockingly. It was only oil, water, and an egg to the pre-mixed dry ingredients, but the track record for things going wrong was impressive. Once that was combined, you lined the pan with parchment paper and Baxter poured into the batter. By the time you had shut the bowl, the oven beeped. Baxter, after checking to make sure the temperature was right at least twice, slid the pan into the oven. He set a timer for half an hour in accordance with the directions.
I can do that.
Might take a little bit longer than that. I'll keep an eye on it. Last thing you want is heaps of burnt cake. Right. Suddenly all that was left to do was wait. Baxter checked his phone for messages as he was leaning against the counter. Uh-huh. A grin spread across his features and his fingers flew across the screen to send off a quick text. Peering from his shoulder, he managed to sneak a peek at a few pictures of Scott's game controller. It had thankfully uncomplicated design, bright red with a handful of black and white buttons and joysticks. The shape looked like it could be pretty easy to replicate. It was wide and bulky. The sheet cake could be carved with a general shape for sure. With this, I'll prepare a stencil. Keep an eye on a cake for us, will you? Half serious and half joking about the cake, he departed into the kitchen. Her heart fluttered when he said us, even though you knew it was purely insidious. This was a project between the two of you. So us was an obligation from the well-meaning Baxter, who gave credit where credit was due. As commanded, you brought your nose up to the warm oven and peered inside. Since the cake was hiding behind a tinted window, you couldn't exactly register how it was doing. Couldn't smell anything either. That you would take. No scent, no smoke. I mean, it's certainly good. Overall, the cake was there. That was a cake in a pan. It was fine. Maybe. Hopefully. Apologies to have kept you waiting. Baxter returned with a plain sheet of printed paper and pencil. Afraid I don't have a printer, so I'll have to freehand it. That prompted the question as why he had printer paper in his house then. He didn't give the question room to write. He's hopefully unlike your cake. Baxter set his supplies down and leaned over his phone, his brows forward with a concerted effort. The tip of his pencil had yet to meet the page. Baxter hesitated as he drew his screen closer to double-check the shape before finally committing to graphite to white. He slowly drew out the lower curve of the controller, stopping every so often, leaving darker lines at certain points. When he closed off the complete shape, it was completely lopsided. The first half looked quite good, and the other half, forever, was short and narrow. He bought it all, and hit it all too soon.
Well,
I wasn't expecting it to be perfect on my first try. He chuckled, running his fingers through his hair. Baxter started easing his failure before sighing loudly. Giving up, Baxter simply returned the page onto its other side. He stretched the controller again, and no more success than the last. He set the pencil down. There was no attempt to erase anything. Baxter was already turning the other half of the apartment. I'll get another sheet. Rather than an entire stack would be best. He stood up, digits resting across the nape of his neck. Baxter's eyes met yours. His tense smile faltered a bit as the bright browns of his irises flickered straight down to the ground. You don't need to worry. I'm not quite as sensitive as I used to be about these mistakes. I will survive this, pride as wounded as it may be from these trials and tribulations. His tone was joking and light, but you couldn't help finding it unfunny. The fact that you know agonize over missteps far more than the average person. I'm sure it's fine. The last few days you spent with him, you had seen him grow as a person. You wouldn't believe that he could deal with it, even if he had said nothing. I can get you a pencil and bring even more people to share if you like to give it a try as well. Why not? Sounds like fun. Yeah, if you could do it, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly.
Bax nodded, disappearing back to whence he came. Moments later, he returned through the halls with an inch stack of paper, as he said he would, and with a second pencil in tow, too. Resuming his Herculean task, Baxter took another sheet of paper off the top and hoped the third time would be the charm. After taking another glance at the reference photo, you sketched out the general shape of the controller. Baxter peeked over your shoulder, outright dropping his pencil once he realized it was better than what he could even do before it was done. Once he finished, Baxter gracefully took it in hands.
You're good.
Thank you, Luna. You saved me a bunch of burden buying more paper this late in the evening. The night before a wedding I'm supposed to be a planner for. He laughed, his tone softening as he said your name. It was a stencil. He hadn't taken the time for any particular details. Still, Baxter seemed to be relieved. Luckily, that was less painful than I assumed. You didn't miss the mark sarcasm was stuck into his words, despite his better efforts. We can prepare the colors. Perusing the counter for what remained of supplies, he picked up the box of food coloring. It had been eased before, judging by the inky smears left behind on Bax's fingertips as he gathered the few butters he needed, every color except for yellow. As he worked through them, you pried open the little tubes of frosting.
All right.
Nearly all of that will need to be red. Let's save some for white, off-white, I suppose. Cream cheese can only look so pale, and a little extra for the black parts. And I do believe mixing blue, green, and red will produce black. Well, no. Technically, yes, but also no. If you mix... Because that's the color of computer screens, but also mixing red, yellow, and blue would also mix it. It's color of light versus color of art. After closing the text of photos, he searched online how to make black frosting. Yes, that appears to be the way. Adding cocoa powder make it even a richer black. Oh, clever. I don't have any. Shah glanced in your direction, lips pressed into a thin smile. Our wise man said, "Of course you know." I don't have any baking supplies. 2 little bowls were filled with several messy spoonfuls of frosting. The rest was plopped into a larger salad bowl, which Baxter couldn't help but noticing as ironic. Diaries added drop by drop, building up the shades as you went. The red bottle was squeezed nearly empty to reach a true red that matched the controller. Your white frosting was the only one that remained unblemished. What was precious little red remained was reserved for black, which ended up as a dismal gray. A harsh thing to think about a color that was, well, somewhat somber by nature. Still, Baxter didn't want to push the dye any further at risk of ruining its taste or consistency.
It's...
Few people are likely to notice that the black is more of a... His words trod off into nothing, eyes half ladled as he stared at the frosting with newfound recognition. Gray? His face turned to you, taut with an unspoken emotion. Baxter's unthinking reached out to swipe a bit of leftover frosting stuck to your fingers, stopping himself before he did. Oh, right. This will work fine for our purposes. He went to withdraw the saran wrap from one of the kitchen drawers and proceeded to hastily wrap up the 3 bowls before finally putting them away in his fridge. With the frosting and stencil taken care of, the 2 of you busied yourself cleaning the counter and tossing the refuse, pieces of cardboard, a hollow-up frosting tub, failed controller outlines. Baxter even got a chance to properly hang his jacket. The timer ran out as he continued with minor chores. He moved on to cutting out the stencil using the same scissors Baxter had set aside from his adventures in opening the cake mix box. Baxter to handle the cake. The toothpick test was done and came out clean. It was time for your treat to chill inside the freezer until it was set enough to be decorated. Outside of that, everything that was needed to be done had more or less been done. It's odd how familiar the empty space between a finished cake and an almost finished one felt. Then again, this had all happened before, hadn't it? You weren't left lingering in that quiet for long. Bax had a plan for what to do next of sorts. It amounted to pressing against the fridge with his body almost perfectly parallel to it and staying that way. Before you could ask, he sighed deeply, as if the air he had stored in his body was being sucked out of him by the devious appearance he'd become attached to you. I cannot believe I'm doing this again. What, are you implying you're not thrilled about this development? You teased. No, never. Baxter's eyes closed as he languished there in relevant silence. The veneer of him being a put-together wedding planner had been chipping since before you walked through his front door. It was entirely absent then. Who he actually was had been left exposed. You wanted to talk to him, the Baxter before you. So what's up? Why are we here? I mean, I know why technically, but really, why did you decide to do this at all? No one would have thought of it if you hadn't brought it. wouldn't have thought of any of it if you hadn't brought it up. True, I wouldn't just volunteer for such an absurd assignment either. But I can admit I wouldn't do this for every client, and somehow that makes this worse. It's painfully obvious I have some personal investments, enough to merit this. He gestured vaguely to the kitchen, the tea.
I swear.
More than I intended to be, more than I ought to have. His arms relaxed, failing uselessly to his side. Finally, Baxter pried himself off the appliance, though he didn't remove himself from it for long. Instead, his black hair tousled as he flopped around so the back of his head was up against it. His gaze shifted to the ceiling, suddenly fascinated by the next floor up. I wouldn't have done it if you weren't here. Baxter closed his eyes, sighing deeply as he continued. Even though Miranda was the client's sister, he said client in the way that made Jude sound clerical. That detached him from knowing him, Miranda or Scott as actual people. I wouldn't have offered. It'd be overreaching to do as much as I have. I've gone above the line beyond the line of pure professionalism more than once already. The cake is just icing on top. Why did you do that if you're so worried? And what do I have to do with it? The question made him stop in his tracks. His confession came, uncharacteristically, without much thought on how it would be received. Now, he needed to explain himself. Well, naturally it was against my better judgment to make anyone uncomfortable.
Of course.
Of course, in tight spots, Jude wouldn't have questioned any help he was offered. But what would Miranda have thought? And Terry as well, if some strange man they knew long ago was getting that personally involved in their situation? I wouldn't have crossed that line no matter how much sympathy I had for Jude's position. Miranda and Terry had been near friends for years. He was certain Baxter was wrong about his assumption. Whether or not Baxter had prior experience with these two, there was no way they would judge him poorly for caring about someone, especially when it was for Jude and Scott. Baxter wasn't finished, however, and you weren't going to interrupt. So where did my confidence come from? Very simply, I thought you would understand that I had good intentions, that the odd lengths I went was merely how I am, that it was okay to let me be involved, and if you did understand, everyone else would as well. Oh. His answer fell like a rock into still water. He seemed smaller. Younger now, like he was still 19.
Truthfully.
As soon as it comes to you, it appears my reason goes out the window, along with much of my dignity. He snorted devilishly and didn't know where to look. The tiles above had lost their appeal. But that's how it is. I do understand, Baxter. I know you. He settled on staring past the wall, past everything. His arms crossed over his chest. Baxter's fingers dug into the sleeves of his shirt, pinching the knitting fabric with new creases. His voice felt so far away, too, like he wasn't there in the same room with you anymore. It's odd, really. I'm the one who left. I heard you. And yet, I haven't stopped seeing you as someone important to me, important in my life. It truly does seem as though everything I did was for no reason at all. Baxter gave you no time to process the emotions he stirred before he launched into a non-sequitur that he set you for a loop in an entirely different way. Luna, do you know that I enjoyed dyeing my hair? For a second, you weren't sure that you heard right. Baxter had been painfully honest with you these last few seconds, only to prompt you to non-hair dye? It convinced you that he was doing the same thing he always did, changing the topic when it became too real. When nothing further happened, you realized he was seriously waiting for an answer. Yeah, you had your hair dyed when I met you. It had white stripes. Like everything else about him, though you didn't add to that conversation. He smiled faintly. He idly ran a finger along the curves of his bangs. That was my most dramatic look. However, I started dyeing my hair when I was 14. I'm still dyeing. Another little kernel of truth that you hadn't been prepared for. That isn't your natural hair color?
No.
It's not. Then what? I'm guessing it's gonna be more like a orangey brown or something. He twirled one of his longer strands of his hair around his finger. Gray. Oh. The generous might say I could count it as black, or that's it black in the right light, as my parents placingly put it.
Honestly.
The fact of the matter is that it's dusty gray, quite similar to the frosting, actually. Considering it's been a decade of dye jobs and you've clearly never seen his roots show, Baxter is more than dedicated. No way. He chuckled out your disbelief. His smile was faint, tucked in his cheek. Yes way. Now, why would I do that? I said to myself earlier, who would notice a color that wasn't exactly black? Why would they care even if they did? Me. I noticed and it bothered me, so I dyed it. He pinched the fringe of his treater's hair again before finally leaving it be his hair and finding it resting place on his upper arm. Was it something I want only for my own preference, or was it because I believe if I saw an imperfection then it meant for everyone else did? Probably the latter. But yeah, I'm the same way. That was the crux of it. He doubted his actions and appearance because others could scrutinize them. But whether they actually would or not didn't matter. He projected self-invested insecurities on those around him. Bax only seemed half aware that what was happening. He couldn't fully believe that those who cared about him did so without terms and conditions. His jaw tensed with newfound frustrations. Baxter was firmly rooted in his moment, stubbornly refusing to take his thoughts away from it. It startled you, in part because this was the first time he ever opened up to you without probing, and because, at the end of everything, you were still the only one he trusted enough to tell him.
Well,
I have always been like this, Lena, I won't bore you with the details. His voice was as delicate and heavy as glass. I'm sure you made up your question remaining here enough as it was. In short, what I'm saying is that I'm a fraud in all regards. Can't take any of it seriously, including what color my hair is. He chuckled darkly, pushing himself off the refrigerator and busying himself with checking the cake in the freezer. As the tension reached a fever pitch, Baxter reached out to pluck the metaphorical thread and unwound it with a force of levity. No more than 10 minutes or so had passed since you put it aside, but it felt like hours had gone
I
by.
appreciate the understanding.
Your many attempts to give me credence are noted and appreciated, though. He shut the door again before announcing that he would need to check the oven again to make sure it was really gone off. Not that he doubted your ability to turn off an appliance, but for his own self-preservation. That time was the classic Baxter, chain of topic when it got uncomfortable for him. He always did that. Baxter tore himself apart, shred by shred, exactly like he did to that cake mix box earlier, all for just being who he was. Of course, he wasn't telling the truth when he told you he didn't want to do that anymore. That was another of his made-up stories that he said for the amusement of the listener. We had some clarity for the first time in years. Baxter returned to your side eventually. His teasing smile softened as his gaze met your pensive stare. You're kind to listen to me complain. He reached out, lightly pressing his fingers to your arm.
I'm sorry.
It's a bad idea to make you deal with that. I once saw everything that we, Jude, Scott, Miranda, and Terry worked for by ruminating on my indiscretions the night before the wedding, at least not for any longer. His voice was firmer, and changed from moments before. He drew his line in the sand for the evening, meaning that you aren't going to be able to pry any more out of him. But perhaps later, if you're interested. Oh. Okay, I understand. The weight of it still sat heavily on your shoulders. He didn't give you a response outright, instead of favoring a practiced smile. There was a tinge of regret that lingered in his eyes, at telling you no again. At least time, once and for all, there was a no for now.
Good.
Can I have you a glass of fresh water, Luna? Still a sparkling, or there's oat milk if you're feeling fancy. The only other drinks in the apartment are not appropriate for the present situation. I won't repeat every mistake of my life, only the largest, most impactful ones. Being offered water while still teetering out on the precipice of a deep, meaningful conversation, huh? Where have you heard that one before? Except where you've been trying to help Baxter open up on that fateful evening long ago. Here he was, once again deploying social niceties to make sure that didn't happen. Talk about ironic. It was strange that the events from 5 years prior should keep showing up relevant to the present, but the steps out of order and the meanings jumbled up, as if the two of you were tentatively resuming the motions of a dance you thought forgotten, an encore of a summer which had since faded into memory, variations on the theme. Baxter was still regarding you with a polite expression, faintly inquisitive. Right, the drink, that was the real question. You know, I have to do it for the giggles. Maybe something appropriate is just what we need. Bax's eyes were serious, though his manner was light and friendly.
No, thank you.
I'd rather not, I apologize. Water would be great.
Certainly.
Let me take care of that. Please feel free to make yourself comfortable at home in the living room. I promise you the sofa and chairs are comfortable, despite their boxy appearances. And with that, I think this is a good place to end this episode here. I hope you guys have a good day, night, week, month of your lives, and may the stars forever guide your path wherever it might lead you into the future. Hope to see you guys again soon.